Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of No One Tells You. And today I have with me a dear friend, someone who I've known for a long time now, Zeeshan Sultan. Uh, Zeeshan has been one of the few go-to people for me whenever I have any questions related to tech or security. And he has a huge career in this that spans two countries now, since Zeeshan also moved to Dubai last year, just like I did. And before I give any more tidbits or introductions about Zishan, over to you. Thank you for joining. What's up?
Hello, Aamir. Thank you for having me. I'll give a brief intro about myself for the audience. I've been working in cybersecurity for more than a decade now. I started off as a software engineer and eventually switched to cybersecurity as an offensive operator, doing penetration tests and audits and analysis for multiple organizations in terms of offensive capacity to test their security guardrails. And eventually, after half a decade, I switched to the blue teaming side, the defender side of it. Currently, I've been helping gaming industry here in Dubai in building defenses for their products and enterprises.
Awesome, awesome. And before we go on, you just said blue teaming. So I
Mhm,
know a lot of people might not be aware of these terms. So can you give us a
mhm.
little background into this red team, blue team, all of these things?
So these terms come from the military background of security, and since cybersecurity is very much intertwined with the military terminology, so I'll explain briefly. Red team means simulating a real threat, working like a real attacker to attack an organization to test their security posture. And
Right.
blue teaming means the exact opposite of it, people who are working as the defenders of that organization, building security controls so the offensive operators cannot get in.
Right, right. Awesome.
Hmm.
Thanks for that. Okay. So, Zishan, I brought you in today to ask you a few questions about what I've been reading, and I'm sure a lot of other people have been reading online as well.
Hmm.
Things to do with identity, general AI threats that we're now seeing, and things to do with cybersecurity attacks happening on so many levels. So, we'll just dive in one by one. Okay.
Hmm.
And so the first one is pretty basic, honestly. I mean, you've built your whole career in the intersection of tech and security, right?
Hmm.
What's that one lesson from your journey that people don't usually get, or they don't usually hear about, but it really shaped your approach about
Hmm.
security today? What
Hmm.
would that be?
So I've talked to people from both walks of life, people who are hardcore techies for their entire career, and people who just started their career in security and stayed there. So the place where both areas meet is context, a lot of context. So when
Hmm.
I'm working as an offensive operator or as a security guy securing a product, the insights I have into the business processes of that product or the architecture of that product or the technology side of things helps me gain better context, contextualize or make the risks well nuanced, to be very honest, because a lot of security guys, they're more well bent on finding vulnerabilities, have finding issues, but
Yeah.
not understanding the real context or the real risk that means to the business. So that's
Hmm.
the benefit of being the best of both worlds, or at least the part of both worlds.
So you're saying that people who are in cybersecurity, they're not well aware of, let's say, the customer journey or the UX,
Mm.
or how their patches could impact a product. Is that what you're saying?
Not precisely, but something close. So it's all about perspective. When you have a hammer, every problem starts to look like a nail. So when
Yeah.
a security guy looks at an application, his perspective is to find bugs, find vulnerabilities. He lacks the context of the business value that product generates.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I get it. Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, looking back, is there something in the early days of your career that you would have done differently to have the same context that you have today, or would it be the same?
Okay. So if you ask me, the one thing I could have done differently would be to productize more. Productize in the sense of I love solving problems. I do that on a daily basis, and I also, as a career, I identify problems myself. But to turn those problems into functional products is something I rarely follow up on. I lose interest midway. So that is something I would have done differently.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of software engineers who can relate with
Yeah,
you when you say that. Yeah, absolutely.
right.
Okay,
Hmm.
cool, cool. Okay, so let's move to what I said earlier about AI because that's the hot topic nowadays, right? So,
Mm,
uh, AI is like, it's being called the best and the worst thing that could happen to technology and to cybersecurity
mm,
as well.
mm.
From your perspective, what's one way AI is already making us safer or it's making us more vulnerable? What's your perspective on this?
So if you ask my opinion, professional and personal both, I'm very long on AI. Long in terms of good or bad, I don't know. It's definitely revolutionary for sure. There
Yeah,
were a couple of ads in between, like crypto, not the entire crypto space, but certainly the cryptocurrencies and the tokenization part of it. I believed for a very long while that it was all a fad. It was, it was gonna be over the next rainy season. But AI is here to stay. And
okay,
when you ask me whether it's good or bad, it's a two-edged sword. So, for example, in terms of my day-to-day use, we are extensively integrating AI in our workflows, and our mean time to detect or the operator's efficiency has increased exponentially
okay,
utilizing AI. At the same time, that same efficiency is being afforded by a bad actor who can afford to get his hands on an AI. So
exactly.
I believe AI, you cannot just control it. You cannot control this phenomena as of now, and nobody can predict how it will pan out in the long term. But for sure, that is something that we can build guardrails around to have a better experience with AI, I think.
Okay, so I mean, talking specifically about cybersecurity, do you think
Hmm.
the benefits of AI in cybersecurity will ultimately outweigh the risks?
We will have to wait and watch. I don't think anyone can predict that at this point.
I'll take that as a political answer. Okay. Right, right. Okay, so one company actually that you introduced me to some years ago, Trail of Bits, they
Hmm.
just released an an autonomous AI system called Buttercup,
Hmm.
and it
Hmm.
finds vulnerabilities on its own. And I
Hmm.
mean, it's pretty cool, right? But do you
Hmm.
think the future of pen testing, because that's been a larger part of your career as well, the
Hmm.
future of pen testing is machines replacing humans, or is it some way supercharging humans? How's it going to work?
Uh, okay. So for humans, I believe one of the oldest skills the humans acquired was storytelling. And we put that in our daily practice in business and security as well. I believe machines will never be able to completely take over this human element out of the workflows of a business, tech businesses especially, because humans will be there as the storytellers, contextualizing the real value in terms of cybersecurity, maybe the real risk in terms of products, real value that's being delivered to the consumer, and that value will become, I think, over time more and more efficient. Because initially, like say 5 years ago, building a product that delivers a PDF report took maybe a month. Now it takes like 10 minutes with the tools like Cursor and stuff. So
Yeah.
the value efficiency has increased exponentially. It's not going to replace you, don't worry.
Yeah. Well, it's not me that's on the line, is it? It's the cybersecurity folks. Okay. Well, okay, sure. I mean, I get it. And that's the general response if you ask anyone, right? Even
Mm,
people who are building AI, I've spoken
mm,
to some of them. Even they're like,
mm,
no, it's not going to replace anyone.
mm,
All the people in this space say that, but then you have opponents to this theory as
mm,
well who are like,
mm,
it's already replacing humans. So
mm,
who's to say that it's not gonna do a
mm,
clean sweep on the whole thing altogether,
mm.
right?
So yeah, so I agree to that point, and to add to it, the rule that it's not going to replace you doesn't apply to people whose jobs are unrelated to critical thinking, whose jobs are less nuanced, whose jobs are uh, whose jobs can be converted to workflows because they were being replaced by RPAs, robotic process automations, a decade ago as well.
Exactly.
But the rate of that replacement has exponentially increased. So I think the story remains the same.
Okay, but again, like let's bring in context here. Let's say
Right.
if someone was to approach you today to
Hmm.
build an AI pen testing solution,
Right.
right? So this
Hmm.
is a twofold question actually.
Okay.
So A, would you, as the developer of that product, as the owner of that product,
Hmm.
would you not want to capture the market entirely? The first.
Hmm.
And second, what safeguards or guardrails would you put in place
Hmm.
to protect the system or maybe people?
Hmm. Okay, so that is something that's very relevant in my day to day these days. Since I'm working at a scale that I have not worked in the past before,
Hmm.
and with that scale, you cannot scale people. Obviously, my security team, the team that helps me deliver the real value to the business, obviously. So,
Yeah.
in that aspect, we're doing a lot of automations using AI. We're building a lot of AI workflows in pen testing, in cybersecurity assessments, in defense as well. But the problem with those is the people who are building them, the people who are utilizing them, their
Hmm.
job has become so much easier. Their delivery has become much more efficient. But at the same time, when building guardrails for this kind of stuff, I've built a career in bypassing security controls as a cybersecurity guy, and everyone else in my team has done the same. And that's the same case for any bad actor as well. If I
Hmm.
build completely autonomous systems conducting this kind of activity, I think it's very easy to fall into wrong hands, and it's very hard to control since our bread and butter is bypassing controls like this.
Yeah. So my follow up to that is, would you use Buttercup?
Would I use Buttercup? Buttercup is very early stage and a POC, and I'm not too confident about it as of now.
Okay.
Maybe later down the road it's mature to a level where I would, but not right now.
Okay. Fair point.
Hmm.
But then we also have AI bots like Xbow, who
Hmm.
are ranking higher than humans on HackerOne.
Hmm.
So if AI can already outperform us in red teaming, what does
Hmm.
that mean for the role of human hackers and security experts like you in the next 5 years?
Hmm. So this is a twofold problem that Xboy is trying to solve.
Okay.
Number one is the detection of vulnerable patterns, say any vulnerability, any weakness in the system. XBOW is trying to detect it accurately. At the same time, it's trying to validate whether the detected finding, whether the detected vulnerability can be exploited or not.
Hmm.
And this is essentially what people, red team operators or pen testers or security auditors, this is essentially what they do: detect and validate. They usually don't exploit. To an extent, they just make like proof of concept exploits, nothing that could violate the privacy or the integrity of the data or the availability of such. But at the same
Okay.
time, XBOW, I think, in my opinion, built their own benchmarks. They've outdone a lot of people. They've built their own benchmarks on why their model is the best, and they've ranked top in the charts of a bug bounty platform as well. But real scenarios are much more different than bug bounty platforms, real enterprise scenarios, especially, and that too at scale. Tech like XBOW, I think, is reaching critical mass very soon in the next 6 months or 1 year, as I can see. If
Okay.
they can like make some enterprise use cases for XBOW, I think
Hmm.
it would be amazing in my workflow or in anyone's workflow arsenal.
So I mean, it's the same, right? I mean, with XBOW or Buttercup, I mean,
Mhm.
eventually, wouldn't organizations want to plug them in, and
Mhm.
in real time they would be finding vulnerabilities as a
Mhm.
white hat,
Mhm.
as an ethical hacker, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Wouldn't I want that embedded into my system from day one, just so it can keep finding vulnerabilities?
So the problem in security is there are a lot of tools, good tools, bad tools, even snake oil kind of tools. Uh, every tool is generating some kind of signal. This was detected, this was a new finding, this is coming up. Our
Hmm.
job is to identify and separate signal from noise. So when we
Okay.
introduce tools like XBOW or AI enabled tools, or if a very simple phenomena, you must have heard about vibe coding.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lots of mediocre quality code is going to be pushed to production in the next 5 years. If you want to fix that,
Yeah.
that's probably the biggest business opportunity in the near future. Similar in
Yeah.
cybersecurity, when we use tools like XBOW or Buttercup right now, in their nascent stage, they generate a lot of noise as well as signal. And it's a
Okay.
lot of hard work to separate the both.
Someone who is a very senior at a very senior post in Microsoft. I spoke with them a few months ago, and they said that AI, the commercial AI that you're seeing now, is
Mhm,
something that we have been exposed to some time before
mhm,
in
mhm,
enterprise settings, right?
mhm, mhm.
So would I be wrong to say that these systems might have already been tried at some level in enterprise when it comes to cybersecurity? You might have tried them as well.
I'm sure. I'm sure. I wouldn't want to reveal much, but most definitely the most latest and greatest models, obviously, governments and large enterprises get access to them, early access,
Yeah.
and eventually they're rolled out to the general public. And the kind of models that you're getting are heavily censored. They have a lot of guardrails around them. I've seen a couple of cases where bad actors had their own models fine tuned to their own requirement. And I believe the threat has not, that's just the tip of the iceberg. I believe the threat would be much, much bigger in the near future. The uncensored versions of the models, the open source, uncontrolled AI models are going to be a big problem as well. That's why major companies have decided to go for open weight instead of open source. So they're relatively easier to control and bake in guardrails, even for the general public and people who use open source for their bad intentions.
Sorry, educate me a little. What is open weight?
So the AI models are coming in three different styles. One is cloud-based AI models that you can access, like ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Then there are models whose source code you don't have access to. Their pre-trained model files are publicly available, like Meta's Llama. You
Okay.
can access Llama's pre-trained model. You can fine tune on top of it. The pre-trained model comes with a couple of guardrails built in. For example, it doesn't allow you to generate any offensive material, any material that could harm others, right? The guardrails are built in, even though the model can be hosted offline, can be run offline without any licensing to Llama or subscription as such. And then there are the open source models where the training data, the source code, and the pre-trained models are publicly available for anyone to access and host on their own. So the third ones are the most dangerous kind, since you can modify the source code, take the guardrails out and stuff. And even with open weight models, there are a couple of jailbreaks available that you can try on, but still they're relatively more controlled. So the guardrails, building the guardrails for foundation models is a big challenge as of now.
Okay. Pretty interesting. So
Mm,
speaking of bad guys,
mm,
one age-old crime has been identity theft, right?
mm,
Identity impersonation,
mm,
AI voice cloning, and
mhm,
AI impersonation is something
mm,
that is coming up, and there have been attacks even on
mm,
political leaders, right?
mm, mm,
So, how do we rethink identity and trust online when
mm,
it becomes impossible to know, who's real,
mm,
who's not?
mm, mm. So that's a very interesting and loaded question. We've been talking about this for a while now, and uh, in the future trends, we see identity as a major market in cybersecurity. The problem with identity so far is it's waiting for its blockchain, or it's waiting for its AI movement, the identity revolution that's gonna be in the next 5 6 years, I believe. The problem with identity is we're treating it very differently, and the user experience is really really bad. For example,
Hmm.
uh, one every single member in our team carries at least two hardware tokens, one device, and one biometric, their fingerprint or whatever, to verify their identity at all times.
Hmm.
Even though that keeps us secure to an extent, and that validates multiple aspects of his identity, including who he is, what he has, the physical tokens, and where he is, stuff like that, building context for identity. But that's all going to be irrelevant in the age of AI, because most of it can be bypassed as of now, or will be in the near future. For example, the cryptographic tokens, quantum secure problem is there for them. For
Hmm.
facial identity, you have deepfakes, voice cloning, whatnot. Biometric
Yeah.
is not that hard to clone. We've actually run experiments on this. Biometrics are very easy to clone. But there are companies who are you treating identity as human identity, not just a digital fingerprint, digital signature, or a hash in your database. For example, there's this company that's doing very interesting work in this area called WorldNet, World ID and WorldCoin.
Okay.
Where some very intelligent people are building hardware appliances to verify your identity, not just as yourself, but as a human being as well, because AI will generate very close to real synthetic identities in all
Yeah.
aspects of life very soon. So, proving that you're actually human without solving a captcha, of course, through
Yeah.
more verifiable cryptographic means is going to be the future.
So is that gonna include voice, palm? What's it gonna look like?
So far, they're relying on behavioral analytics, they're relying on deep biometrics, and a combination of multiple things. But the user experience has to be seamless.
Hmm.
People tend to not enable 2FA because it's a friction for them and then they get compromised. The UX for identity is very full of friction right now. I think that needs to be
Yeah.
solved.
Okay.
Mhm.
Right, right, right. So is this always going to be a cat and mouse game with defense and offense, or is one side going to be stronger than the other?
It's always going to be like this. That's what I built my career upon.
Right, right, right.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's talk about let's zoom out a bit and talk about governments and larger
Mhm.
corporations, right? So
Mhm.
I mean, this is from what I've read, this is a
Mhm.
debate in cybersecurity that should
Mhm.
governments and these large corporations be allowed to stockpile and use zero-day vulnerabilities for their own defense,
Mhm.
even if it leaves everyone else exposed. What do
Mhm.
you think about this?
Okay, so this is slightly tricky. I mean, if speaking ethically and morally, they shouldn't be allowed to have such weapons in their possession that compromise the privacy of everyone in the world or a lot of people.
Hmm.
That leads to very bad outcomes that we obviously don't want. But at the same time, if they don't participate in this game, the bad actors will. You cannot contain creative freedom of people, of good actors, of bad actors, or just curious people who found a vulnerability and want to sell it in a marketplace for some money.
Hmm.
Because that is one of the MOs of the people who sell zero-day vulnerabilities. It's usually not good or bad actors. It's just curious people selling, and then there's a buyer who's a zero-day broker for governments or bad actors, comes in, buys the zero-day from them, and sells it off for a profit. So the market is becoming more and more lucrative these days, and new players like zero-day brokers are coming up every day.
Hmm.
Ideally, it shouldn't happen, but the governments have to participate to, stay at the same level of a bad actors.
Okay, interesting.
Mhm.
So, and uh, a jacked up version of cat and mouse is
Mhm.
being played by the bigger corporations and bigger governments in play, right?
Mhm. Of course.
Okay. Um, so this is to do with communications because that is one thing that people often get scammed by. It's often we heard that someone got
Mhm.
exploited or an organization was hacked, and
Mhm.
oftentimes the
Mhm.
the source is that some message got leaked, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
when it comes to communication security,
Mhm.
right, where is
Mhm.
the world headed? Are
Mhm.
we gonna keep relying on the encryptions that are built by big tech,
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
is there something else that is brewing up?
So I'm a big believer in the communication security of it all. So far, I think communication is at a very nascent stage, and obviously, it's the need of the hour to massively change our communications infrastructure in terms of most of our data or communication that we have. There's always a human in the loop. Other than WhatsApp and those channels, I'll talk about those in a bit.
Hmm.
Initially, the recent problems people started having were, immigration or law enforcement were looking at people's phones. And
Yeah.
even though that's for security, that's for state security, but privacy is a basic right that's being violated all the time. And
Hmm.
you cannot opt out.
Yeah.
And I think that's a problem. Personally, if I talk about myself, I cannot live in a world where my privacy is violated 15 times a day and I cannot opt out,
Hmm.
right? Taking privacy as like a very first principle of human existence or basic human rights. Moving on, talking about
Hmm.
platforms that pose to offer communication security, they're very controversial. For example, even WhatsApp claims to have end-to-end encryption. But
Yeah.
in the cryptographic community who design these end-to-end encrypted protocols, it's very controversial. For example, most of the end-to-end encrypted apps, they have their clients at least open sourced. The both ends, the sender receiving it, are just the client. If you open
Mm.
source them, someone can come in, audit your encryption scheme. Even though you have a white paper published, does not mean your implementation was accurate, or does not mean your implementation did not have any vulnerabilities.
Or,
So
or
keeping
or
the,
it was done in the same way as I've written it, right? Yeah.
of course, and if they deviate, if one of the developers, obviously it's the human element, deviates from the right implementation to such, it's a massive problem for everyone using that app. And
Yeah.
WhatsApp, even though has a published white paper for their end-to-end encryption, does not have an auditable code base that someone can come in and check. Or maybe they've built a hidden kill switch to enable or disable the encryption from the backend, and it's just good UX that you cannot differentiate from secure or insecure. So
Mm.
relying on these platforms is something I wouldn't be very comfortable with in the longer run. And people who actually mean business, they prefer to go off grid. Early
Right.
on, like 1.5 decade ago, when you thought about going off grid, you thought of someone with a tinfoil hat.
Yeah.
But right now, I think you cannot rely on government's assurance that your data is going to be secure with us. You cannot rely on an enterprise's assurance that we make sure your data is secure. Because at the end of the day, if there's a human in the loop, there's a risk.
Right, right, right. But correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't Signal completely open source? Like everything is open source?
Signal is completely open source. Signal has built very, very robust protocols, auditable code base, and it is, I think, one of the best available options, except for a couple of things. The data, the data that's being routed through multiple servers, it
Mm.
tries to bypass DPI but gets identified a lot of times. Having Signal on your phone raises alarms at times that
Okay.
you're using Signal. Why? So,
Mm.
for example, I mentioned the case of immigration at multiple borders that are checking your phones now. That raises a red flag and gets you into a deeper check. For example, if they identified that there's signal on your device, maybe they flag you for a more detailed check and hold you there for a longer duration. Even when you start scratching the surface, you're supposed to find at anything or everything.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
that's the whole point. But building secure off-the-grid communication platforms, I think, is the need of the hour.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
Hmm. Hmm.
Right. So,
Hmm.
last question now.
Hmm.
Given all that we just discussed and all that's happening, all these shifts that are taking place,
Hmm.
the AI tools, new threats, blurred trust, all of these things.
Hmm.
What's one principle you believe every new product should follow right from the first day
Hmm.
and, to be secure and future proof?
Perfect. That's a good question. So, uh, 2 decades ago, or when people were starting, the tech boom was there. It was very hard to build functional, good, performant applications, let alone secure applications. But the development ecosystem has matured so much that secure by default is the new go-to.
Hmm.
Secure by default or secure by design means you cannot bypass the security controls that are baked into the language, into the platform, or into the content management system, or into the framework you're using. Everything comes with secure by defaults. For example, Rust language that recently came out a couple of years ago has massively improved the memory related vulnerability ecosystem. There were a lot of buffer overflows in C that a developer could make a very simple mistake and introduce a massive vulnerability, and has been the case for the last decade or so. But when you're using Rust, there are a lot of secure by defaults. So I think if you follow the secure by default policy, when not just choosing the right framework, the right technology for building your application, but also implying that in your design stage, your business logic stage or
Hmm.
business value stage, introduce them in the design instead of adding guardrails, detection mechanism, and prevention mechanisms later on. That would save you a lot of cost, time, and money, of course.
Right, right. Because I mean, I've also been a part of a few products
Mhm.
back in the day where, when we used to talk to the stakeholders that, we gotta make something more secure or we gotta put in more authentication layers in between,
Mhm.
the
mm,
first question that would always come up, as you also pointed out, was that, the UX is going to be compromised. So,
mm,
forget about it. And
mm,
later, their whole databases would be leaked, customer information, vendor information, so many other things. So
mm,
I think you're right. I mean, an entrepreneur today has to think about security at all times. I mean,
mm,
we see that happening in the new AI products as well, right?
mm, mm.
Okay, so
So, mhm,
yeah, go
go
on, go
ahead.
on. No, no, go on, please.
Adding to whatever you said, uh,
Hmm.
discovery was a major part of our job as hackers when working as an offensive operator. Discovering the vulnerabilities, exploiting them was a later stage problem.
Okay.
With AI, this has already been sped up massively. For example, if I recently conducted an activity that spread across 3 different countries in a large organization of almost 10,000 people. And the discovery early on took about 6 months, 2 years ago. And this time it took less than 20 days to discover all the evidence, find exploitable scenarios, and then process that data later on. So that's the rate and scale of speed in terms of discovery. So it's not a matter of if you get hacked, it's a matter of when you get hacked
Right.
now.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, Zishan, just to close it off, what's an example of a product that you think is, doing all the right things?
Doing all the right things. That's a very hard question because as someone who does critical analysis of products all the time as a living, I can't put my mind at one, but there are a couple of products that were doing a lot of right things. For example, Signal is one of my favorite organizations that are building security into their DNA,
Hmm.
and not just in terms of their code, in terms of their organizational structure, in terms of how they operate. There are other products. For example, Briar is also another product in communication security
Okay.
that follows similar principles to Signal. Is not very popular among the general audience. It's popular only among techies, but has a very decentralized infrastructure that Signal does not. So
Okay.
keeping the communication infrastructure decentralizes, I think, is going to be big as well, because
Right.
when you centralize infrastructure, Big Brother's watching. So everyone should be able
Yeah.
to host their own infra up and running very quickly. One of those things.
Right.
Mm,
Right. Got it. Got it.
mm, mm.
Uh, well, that's it from my side. Any final words for people breaking into the cybersecurity path, or someone building their products around the cybersecurity landscape?
Mm. Of course. So security for people who are building their products, who've just started building their tech products and started entering the security landscape. Uh, I think doing security in your product is not that hard. You don't have to right away hire a pen testing company or right away hire a third party security services provider or get enterprise products or firewalls installed into your like budget. People run off from security because of these concerns that it's going to cost a lot of time, money, effort to get enabled by security.
Hmm.
Choose the right tech stack. Think about security when you're choosing your tech stack. When you're planning your product, think about security. Just having that thought in mind and having ChatGPT as your disposal, always adding the extra end of the prompt, like make sure it's secure, make sure it follows secure by design principle, will give you a better picture when building products.
Great, great, great. Well, thank you, Zishan, for taking out the time, and great to have you, man.
Thank you for having me. Have a great day. Bye bye.
You too. Bye.